They say a single moment can change the world. But what happens when that moment is soaked in blood and no one takes the blame? Jimmie Lee Jackson didn't carry a weapon. He wasn't starting a riot. He wasn't even shouting. He just wanted to walk his grandfather home after a peaceful protest. But by the end of that night, Jimmy was lying on the floor of a café, bleeding out from 2 gunshot wounds to the stomach. His mother was screaming beside him. The police had already walked away, and history was about to be rewritten. It was February 18, 1965, in Marion, Alabama, a small southern town steeped in segregation and tension. But that night, it wasn't criminals or rioters causing a disturbance. It was ordinary citizens, black men and women, gathered inside Zion's Chapel Methodist Church. Their goal? To demand the most basic right in a democracy, the right to vote. Among the crowd was 26-year-old Jimmie Lee Jackson. He was no radical, just a hard-working pulpwood plant worker, an Army veteran, and a young deacon at his church. He lived with his mother and grandfather. He believed in peaceful resistance. And most of all, he believed in change. When the marchers left the church that night, they carried no weapons, just faith. They walked quietly into the night, arm in arm, some humming spirituals, others holding signs. But they didn't get far. Lying in wait were Alabama state troopers and local deputies, already agitated, already armed. As soon as the marchers stepped onto the sidewalk, the beatings began. Without warning, officers descended like a wave of violence. Protesters were clubbed, chased, slammed into storefronts. Even ministers were struck in the head with nightsticks. The crowd scattered in terror, trying to escape the reign of brutality. Jimmy saw his 82-year-old grandfather, Cager Lee, being shoved to the ground. His mother, Viola Jackson, was crying out in fear. In a panic, they ducked into Mac's Café, just off the main road, hoping the chaos would pass them by. But it didn't. Inside the dimly lit café, all 3 tried to catch their breath. But seconds later, the door flew open. A white state trooper burst in. His name was James Boned Fowler. What happened next would stain the soul of America. Fowler shoved Jimmy's mother violently. She fell. Jimmy rushed forward to shield her. He raised his hands. He begged the trooper not to shoot. But Fowler did it anyway. 2 gunshots rang out. One hit Jimmy in the stomach. The other tore through him as he fell. He collapsed onto the floor of the cafe, unarmed, bleeding, dying. Jimmy survived that night, but barely. He was taken to a segregated hospital in Selma, 30 miles away, where black patients were given little more than the minimum care. He lingered there for 8 days, in pain, alone, without justice. He died on February 26, 1965, and the state of Alabama called it self-defense. No officer was arrested. No apology was issued. There was no grand jury, no charges. His name barely made the front pages. But word spread fast, especially to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who had already been organizing efforts in Selma. Jimmy's death was the final straw. Days after the funeral, Dr. King stood at the pulpit and called for action. He said, "We must march. We must stand up. We must walk to Montgomery." What came next would shake the nation. On March 7th, just weeks after Jimmy was buried, nearly 600 peaceful protesters left Selma to begin the 50-mile march to Montgomery. But when they reached the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they were met with violence yet again. State troopers on horseback charged into the crowd, swinging clubs and firing tear gas. Protesters were trampled, beaten, bloodied. That day became known as Bloody Sunday. But instead of silencing the movement, the images of bloodied marchers on national television shocked the world. Americans, black and white, could no longer pretend everything was fine in the South. The footage from Selma pierced the conscience of the nation. 2 weeks later, under federal protection, thousands of marchers finally made it to Montgomery. They walked the same path Jimmie Lee Jackson never got to take. On August 6, 1965, less than 6 months after Jimmy's death, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, a landmark law prohibiting racial discrimination in voting. Jimmy never lived to see it, But it was his blood on the floor of that cafe that helped make it happen. Still, for decades, the man who killed him, James Bonnet Fowler, walked free. He returned to duty, lived a normal life. It wasn't until 2007, 42 years later, that a grand jury finally indicted him. And in 2010, Fowler pled guilty to manslaughter. The sentence? 6 months in jail. Justice had arrived, but like so many things in America, it had arrived late. Delayed. Diluted. Yet what Fowler took away with those bullets sparked something greater than he could ever imagine. Jimmie Lee Jackson's death ignited one of the most important movements in modern history. He didn't carry a rifle. He never raised a fist. But he changed the country with his sacrifice. In the end, he wasn't just a victim. He became a symbol that he reminds us that real change often comes at a terrible cost. That justice is not always swift, but it can come. And when it does, it can move mountains. Jimmie Lee Jackson walked into that cafe hoping to save his family. Instead, he helped save a nation. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future deep dives into the most shocking true crime cases. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more true crime cases that demand to be heard.